and welcome to your weekly podcast from Freestyle Media in partnership with the Magic 5, where you can get 15% off a pair of their custom fit goggles by using the affiliate link in the description to this episode. So last week we previewed the World Masters Championships, which is ongoing as we speak. But today we're going to rewind the clock back a few weeks as we're joined this week by GB swimmer Amber Keegan. So thanks for coming on the podcast, Amber.
Hiya, it's my pleasure.
So look, it's been a brilliant time for you. You know, a few weeks ago you were out there in Japan competing at the Worlds. It was a big thing for you, obviously. 10 years ago, you made your first junior team, and it's kind of been a long journey since then. So obviously I want to talk a lot about Japan and how you kind of got on there. But my first question really is, like, can you kind of sum up briefly how it felt to make a GB team and to be out there kind of representing your country?
It's really hard to put into words. It's like really difficult to put into words. I'm not normally someone who's very lost for words, as anyone who knows me in real life knows, but it's just incredibly gratifying and I'm incredibly grateful, and I'm so happy, not just for myself, but the best thing to sum it up for me was how it felt to kind of get that call to say I was going to Fukuoka, and then be able to pick up the phone to everyone that mattered to me in my life and be able to call my family and my friends and my coaches, past and present. And it's just been such a long, hard road to get here, not just for me, but for everybody that supported me through it. And it's just the best feeling in the world to have that start paying off and to be kind of really excited for the future.
Yeah. It's been an incredible journey, and obviously we will talk about a lot of the elements of that journey. But now, just focusing on Japan itself, you swam in the 5K and the 10K. Your 10K, I'm sure you would say, was your best race. 2 hours, 3 minutes, and 30 seconds. You finished in 18th position. It's a fantastic first attempt, really. On that kind of stage, on that platform. Were you pleased with your performance, or did you kind of come away and go, "I've got X, Y, and Z to work on now"?
Both. So. It's for me, like you say, it's my first Worlds in anything, and so I only really got into I only got into open water last year, and I only did my first 10K in February this year, so kind of 6 months ago. So it's been an absolutely huge learning curve for me, but I've really enjoyed the kind of element of it, of starting again and being a beginner and having to kind of learn so much. And it's been really fun, but also I didn't really know where I was. So I've been kind of lucky enough to have the opportunity to be able to get to do some European and World Cups, particularly once that Worlds team had been confirmed. Like me and Leah, who hadn't made a team before, got to get a little extra bit of experience. But you never really know where you are against other people. I think even in the pool, you understand, don't you? Like when you're not at the major competition, everyone's got different things going on. They might be trying different race tactics, different feeding strategies. They might be in a really hard training block and knowing they're not going to put in their best performance. So I kind of knew where I hoped I'd come, and I hoped it would be around top 20. I thought that was around where I was right now, with a lot more work still to do. And so to actually kind of have that confirmed, I guess, for me, to place 18th in my first Worlds was, I was super grateful, and kind of it really reaffirmed for me that I've made the right choice in switching to open water. And for the people around me who've helped get me into open water as well, I think we're all pretty happy with that. And also I have a lot to work on. That was my fourth 10K, I think, maybe my fifth. I'm pretty sure it's my fourth. So haven't really done a lot yet. So in open water, obviously 10K is the only one you can qualify for the Olympics for, and that's the focus. And as you say, it was much better than my 5K. But I kind of did the 5K knowing I was absolutely spent, but I just saw it as another opportunity to get experience, practice the start, practice being around boys, practice drafting. When else can you practice against the best in the world except at Worlds? So I basically it was a 3-lap race in that 5K, and I got 2 laps in, and I was just like, I've got nothing. I've gone. I felt like I was swimming backwards. My tendons were screaming at me, because they've kind of struggled to, I guess, keep up. Not struggled to keep up, but they've been the thing that's taken the longest to kind of work on. Right. And they really felt it trying to do that 5K. But I'm really glad I took the opportunity, and the hard work seems to be paying off.
It's, just listening to that there was fascinating, because you talked about you didn't really know where you were at. And that to me is amazing, that you can go on the world stage representing Great Britain and not really know where you're at because you're only 6 months into your open water kind of journey, which just shows clearly how talented you are, that you were able to make a team being in this early stage of the whole thing. And I know swimming is swimming, so it's not like you've done nothing before.
Yeah.
But talk to me about that transition. So 6 months in, what was the reason for the transition? And when did you first stop and think, oh, I wonder what open water would be like?
Yeah, so like open water had kind of always been slightly on my radar as long as I've swum, really. So I actually had entered the Great North Swim previously, kind of when I was, I think maybe about 19. I'm 26 now. And I just never managed to kind of do a race. It was always at the wrong time. Like it was always just before pool nationals, back when pool was going really well, or it was always kind of after. And I was like, I really want a summer break. Or kind of there was the time I did enter the Great North Swim and then had a bit of a shoulder niggle, and we were like, I can't even do the training for this right now, so there's no point in me trying to race it. But the real kind of turning point for me actually came from a really, for me, not very nice week. So at trials last year, my main aim last year was making the Commonwealth Games for that 400 IN.
Yeah.
And that had been the race that I'd trained for. It was the race that took me to European and World Juniors in my junior career. And yeah, like I'd been training faster than I ever had. Like I could drop hundreds on every stroke, way faster than I ever had before. I was like, I'm in the shape of my life. I'm over a huge PB. We're off to Common Games. And then it did not go that way. My heat was really good, really, really smooth. And then in the final, I think it had been kind of a really long road to get there. I'd basically had like 5 years of combination of injury and illness. And I think it almost meant too much to me. I was kind of behind the blocks, like so worried about making sure that all the hard work I'd put in behind the scenes was paid off, that I wasn't actually thinking about the race. And I was kind of almost so wound up and so tight that I just didn't swim like myself. Like my coach and a few close friends whose opinions I trust very much, they were like, we watched you swim and it just didn't look like you in the water. And yeah, I swim really badly, did not make the team, did not deserve to make the team. But that's how sport goes sometimes. And I was absolutely crushed by that. Like really, probably the only time I've ever been properly heartbroken. And yeah, I had a lot of cries. I got it all out. I moped for a while. I allowed myself kind of time to grieve, I guess. And then I was like, right, what am I doing with the rest of the year? You've got two options: either pack it in on this note or pick yourself up, find something good to do, find why you enjoy swimming again and try and make something of it. So in the pool, I went and did the Mare Nostrum circuit, which I'd always wanted to do, had an absolute blast, kind of remembered why I enjoyed racing, set a couple of personal best times. And then also I tried open water for the first time. So I went out to Best Fest in Mallorca for a week. And I also went to a race that's actually just happened last weekend in Spain, in a lovely little harbour town called Navia. And I really enjoyed the racing, kind of more than I ever had the pool, other than a few minutes of panic. But I think that's totally normal. I don't think you ever 100% enjoy it from the first time you jump in. And also kind of did way better than I expected in terms of kind of like going in and winning some races against people that I'd really not expected to be anywhere near. And that gave me enough confidence to go, maybe I should take this open water thing more seriously next year. It was a little bit of a risk, I guess, 2 years out from the Olympics, but I kind of looked at my 4am and I was like, it's my favourite in the pool, but I don't think I'm going to be good enough. But actually, this open water thing seems to be working quite well for me. And actually, if I look at myself as an athlete in terms of like where my skill set lies, probably should have got into endurance sport a little bit sooner because, and like, I cannot sprint. It's like embarrassing how little twitch I have. However, I can't just keep going and going. And I've been the same since I was 9 years old. It's always been a bit of a running joke, actually, amongst kind of people that have coached me. But it's, yeah, I've clearly kind of, I think, found what I was most suited to.
What's one thing that's really interesting, and just for full disclosure, this is third time lucky recording this. So funnily enough, we have talked before. But when we talked, or over the conversations that we've had, I get the impression that you love open water swimming. You've taken to it really well. I had Kerry-Anne Payne on this podcast a few months ago, and what was really interesting about the things that she said was that obviously that's what she was best at. but it took her a while to fall in love with it. And now she loves it, don't get me wrong. And she's built a great business out of it since she's left. But I feel like you went straight into it and went, wow, this is awesome. I love this. So it's actually felt like quite a smooth transition for you.
I think I was kind of lucky as well, though. So my first races weren't the British circuit. So my first race was in Mallorca in crystal clear water with sunshine on my back. The water was actually quite cold, but I think that's a very different first experience compared to like when I came back and did the qualification for Europeans last year, which I didn't make in Wales, and it was freezing cold and you can't see anything in the water. And I do think they're quite different, like first experiences. I don't actually know what Kerry-Ann's first experience was, but I think in general, a lot of people do have that hesitancy around open water. And also like, it actually is quite scary when you're out there in the water and you feel like the ocean's huge and you feel so small. And I really enjoy that feeling, but it is a little bit scary. And if you're by yourself, whereas I kind of think because my first experience was a race and I had so many people around me, it took away some of those kind of fears. And I guess you don't really have to think in a race. I think maybe I'd have freaked myself out if I'd have trained in the sea beforehand. But actually, kind of, you don't have time to think about what's around you in the water when you're too busy about who else is splashing around you and kind of just keeping out of trouble. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe that's the way. People should just get in a race before they've ever done a training session. Or that could go massively the other way, to be honest. So maybe don't try that at home.
Feels like an all.
For me, it worked.
Yeah, an all or nothing situation, it sounds like.
Yeah, literally. The adrenaline's there.
Yeah, no, for sure. What's really interesting though is you said earlier about the not being a sprinter and not really having any twitch at all. And listen, those things are true. Physically, we're all different, but what we also have individually is a mindset. Now, I wouldn't say I was a natural sprinter myself, but I love it. So when I'm behind the block on a 50 or 100, I'm absolutely buzzing. If I'm behind the block on a 400, I'm nervous because I think, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? Whereas the thought of just going all out doesn't scare me at all. And it sounds like, again, so kind of taking aside the physical aspects of it, the mindset aspects of it, it feels like you just kind of throw yourself into these kind of distance events, in the pool as well, by the way, with your 50, 100 and 800 perhaps. And there's something about that that's quite freeing to you maybe. And whereas you said you're kind of behind the block sometimes on a sprint and you're worried about how it's all going to feel.
Yeah, I think kind of almost counterintuitively, the more that can go wrong, the less I worry about. So behind the 400 IM, there should be nothing something always goes wrong. We know that. You never put together the perfect race. But I'm like, I know I can execute all of this, each individual team, nothing's perfect. Yeah. I can execute all of this really well. There is no reason I shouldn't execute this well. And sometimes that always makes me go, now I have to execute it really well. Yes. And I think some people thrive on telling themselves, I have to achieve this, or I can't do X, Y, Z, like I have to. But for me, have to doesn't work. For me, it really needs to be like a focus on enjoyment. And that doesn't mean I don't take training seriously. I take training very seriously. Yeah. I take my racing very seriously. But for me to race well, the mindset I have to get into is one of kind of relaxation, fun. The more I'm laughing the week in a lead up to the race, the better I'm probably going to do.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that about myself, particularly as I've got older. And I think there are so many things that can go wrong in an open water race. And I think I'm kind of like, well, something's going to go wrong. And all of a sudden the pressure isn't all on me to be perfect. And I think that's a lesson that actually I've kind of gradually been, I guess, learning the older I've got, particularly in training as well. Like I used to properly beat myself up for like an imperfect training session, whatever that really means. That just means you've got something to work on. But nowadays I really don't. Like I wouldn't say I have many bad sessions because I think there's, if you criticizing yourself for being slow, well, you're going out the wrong way. If you're training hard, you should be slow at some times. You just need to understand, should I be slow in this phase? If I am, okay. Am I still working on the elements I need to? And I think something I've really struggled with my whole life is perfectionism, and actually open water's forced me to stop some of that because you can't be perfect in open water. So yeah.
What's really interesting actually is all of that being said, with being tough on yourself and, finding it hard sometimes, one thing that you've then naturally built up, probably without realizing, is an awful lot of resilience. When you think of like the journey that you've had, and we'll get onto that now, of course, you've overcome an awful lot, injuries. I'm getting all this from your Instagram post, by the way. You suffered a car crash. Balancing swimming with education and work is always difficult. And you've also had like your mental health kind of journey as well.
Yeah.
Starting with the latter, can you kind of talk to us about that journey that you've been on?
Yeah. Yeah, journey is definitely the word. I think sometimes it's really like easy to piece things together in hindsight, but I do actually think sometimes hindsight is a really helpful tool because it helps us realize how we can help the people around us better. Like I can never go back in time and help Amber when she was younger, but I can help my teammates around me or the people I've met through sport or the people kind of I help through athlete interactions and not-for-profit organizations. So I kind of honestly now I would tell you that my mental health journey probably started like before I was even 10 years old. Like that's now when I can trace my mental health back to. At like 7, 8, 9 years old, I did not have the words to kind of explain any mental health. Like that wasn't even a concept for me probably until I was in my late teens, mid-teens probably. But like in reflection, it's been something I've struggled with for a very long time. Like I was bullied really quite badly at school. I think every kid can relate to that in some way, shape or form, but I really did have very targeted, kind of deliberate years of abuse from kind of one particular person or a couple of one particular people. And I think that I guess kind of made me realize that even though I came from an absolutely amazing family and like they had done everything in the world to give me the like perfect home upbringing, and I really couldn't be more grateful to my parents for kind of equipping me with the tools to be the person I am today. Like things still weren't kind of happy for me a lot of the time. And like nowadays I can verbalize that, but I know this sounds like a bit of a tangent, but I think it's really important to talk to children about mental health. You don't have to talk to them about the extremes, but if we give them the words to explain when things aren't quite right, then we can help them to communicate it with us.
Absolutely.
And that's something I wish, it's something I wish I'd learned sooner. And I actually think particularly teenagers nowadays, especially like young teens, are learning this sooner. There's a lot of bad about social media. I won't pretend there isn't, but there are also positives. And I think people are kind of understanding what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, how to talk about things that aren't quite right younger. And I think that's a positive. And frankly, kids are going to find out about these things sooner or later. The sooner we give them the words and the tools to be able to explain things that are happening or ways that they're feeling inside, the sooner that we can help them. But I guess when I really started to be able to verbalize this, I was in my teenage years and going through some like rough stuff at school, to be honest. And also just, like I said, I've always struggled with perfectionism, and I'm a person who the education system benefits. Like I won't pretend otherwise. As one of my very good friends put it, I'm the dumbest smart person he knows. But like I've always been good at school, so there was always the pressure to achieve like perfection in all of my grades. And then on top of this, I was trying to swim as well as I possibly could. And it's like I'm really grateful that I was able to kind of do both these things. And some of that's luck and some of that's hard work. But it also kind of meant that I just felt like I was failing if I was anything less than perfect on any one given day. And that's something that kind of dogged me from my teenage years all the way through to kind of university. But kind of, I guess university is when it really started to have more serious impacts on my day-to-day life. So I was really depressed, and I ended up developing an eating disorder around the time I got my first proper injury from swimming. So I tore my hamstring in January of 2017, and swimming had kind of been, without me realizing it, an unhealthy coping mechanism. It was a really positive coping mechanism through a lot of my life to kind of help with exam stress, or if things weren't quite right at school, like I had a safe place to go to, a happy place, a place where when you're swimming those lengths up and down, like no one can hurt you, not with words, not with punches. Like it was really, really my happy place and such a positive influence on my entire life. And I don't know where I'd be without swimming. However, at times it had also become an unhealthy coping mechanism. I was kind of pushing myself too hard to kind of shut out those voices or those memories or those things that had happened that day. And that kind of really kind of became its worst, I guess, when I was at university, which was probably partly due to having less people kind of just seeing as much of me. And I just kind of started eating less and less and less as a way to kind of, without realizing it, control everything that was going on around me. And it just kind of quieted all of those voices in my head because, frankly, I was too tired for them to voice themselves. And kind of really, really messed up and not okay, but like I was sleeping better because I was so exhausted from lack of energy. Obviously not the way to go, not healthy, but that at the time was my like really messed up rationalization for kind of not even realizing I was just kind of gradually eating less. Those voices were getting quieter, gradually eating a bit less because those voices got quieter, and it became this awful vicious cycle until actually it was swimming and my support network that from there, it was my kind of coach and nutritionist at City of Sheffield at the time that realised that things weren't quite right and pulled me to one side and managed to kind of get through to me and convince me to actually seek professional help at that point. And I guess like actually kind of, so I spent 9 months as an outpatient, and then a lot more months after that kind of continuing the recovery journey. But that was, I guess, really where I started to realise, not just in myself, but in all competitive sport, just how many people were going through the same things. So something I found incredibly difficult when I kind of developed my eating disorder and I was trying to get better from it is that I didn't know anyone who had spoken about what I was going through. And yet I'd like read research papers and I knew that the statistics were basically telling me that kind of at least in some cases, 25% of swimmers, were probably going through the same thing. Wow. And I was just like, how am I so alone? Yet there's so many people all going through this. And I kind of promised myself at the time, I was like, if I'm ever completely better and I can speak about these things to a point where it doesn't kind of hurt me to talk about them anymore and I can do so in a healthy way for myself, then I'm going to do that. And everybody doesn't have to do that. We don't need everyone doing that, but it's a very personal decision. And for me, it was actually a motivation to get better, to kind of help make sure that other people didn't have to go through the same thing. But yeah, kind of it was definitely a journey. So I think I struggled a little bit like any swimmer or athlete transitioning from junior to senior did. Like 2013, I won a European junior silver medal, and then my next kind of, really good moving forwards swim was bad way of putting it, but anyway, that was December 2016. Okay. And that was 3 years. So that's pretty standard, I think, for a lot of people. And then I just, it's a little bit of a shopping list, and you said, but combination of bad luck and kind of, I guess, poor mental health, meaning I wasn't taking care of my body enough as well. I kind of tore my hamstring in the 17. I got a shoulder injury in the 2018 as I was trying to kind of return to the pool after, and then 2019 I was like cycling to university and got like taken out by a Land Rover. Wow. I laugh because it is ridiculous. I dented it, which I'm proud of. It was just not very nice. And then obviously everybody that kind of wasn't on a pathway had the same problem through the COVID years. If you were aspiring to anything, like whether you're kind of a young athlete or a masters athlete or or an elite athlete, sport's important to all of us for different reasons, but we all kind of had that taken away from us during the COVID period. And so it was basically 5 years before I could actually start to, like, I was healthy and happy and I wasn't injured, but then it took another couple of years to actually be able to, I guess, like show the work that had gone on both mentally and physically. And actually, frankly, the work I'd done on my own head and my own brain was probably more influential on me actually, I guess, making it to this stage of my swimming career. If I'd not worked on my mental health, there's no way I would be sitting here having just gone to my first World Championships, because I'd have just pushed my body into injury and illness and probably ended up retiring and never swimming again. So yeah.
And that's well, thank you very much, first of all, for sharing that. It's fantastic that you can speak about it. It shows that you're in a great place. And one thing that, was just really, really hit me as you were saying all those things is that at any moment you could have given up, but you didn't. And you hung in there, even if times you just thought, I'm actually hating this. And you said it was kind of your coping mechanism, but then it sounded like it kind of became an enemy as well because of the obsession that you
it's a really good point.
But what's quite interesting then is, talking about the stars aligning, you've moved to open water swimming, and this almost feels like a fresh start, even though it's still off the basis of many years of swimming, which has got you to this point. But it kind of almost feels like a totally different stimulus now, and probably, just coincidentally, a perfect change.
I think you've really hit the nail on the head there. Like, honestly, I think some of you have to know when to quit. And I don't think the entire period that I was ill and injured, I was making the right decision in continuing swimming. And that might sound really strange for me to say, but like, I guess the overall driving factor was, number one, I have something to prove. And I know everyone says that you shouldn't try and prove things to other people, only prove it to yourself. And I think I was mostly trying to prove it to myself, but I was also trying to prove it to other people.
Sure.
And also maybe it was a bit of sunk cost fallacy. I was like, I've put so much work in, this has to pay off. And I honestly think I was delusional slightly at some points with that. Like the closest people around me who I know only had my best interests at heart had all either made kind of not rude comments, but like comments or had conversations with me where they were like, are you sure this is the best decision for you? And actually probably it wasn't for like probably a couple of years, but I don't know whether it was the healthy side of me or the unhealthy side of me that kept me motivated through that time. But swimming was, and honestly, like quite frankly, at times during my injury and illness, I was probably not a good person to have around on poolside. And I probably wasn't a positive influence on kind of the group I was in. And I used to try and keep myself to myself as much as possible when I was having a bad day, but it's still a difficult person to have around. Like, I won't pretend it was all rosy and it was all like, Amber's coming back and she's gonna, like, it wasn't like that. I was miserable and sometimes quite unpleasant, like not mean to people, but just like, you know, when you can tell when someone's really not happy.
Sure.
And no matter how much you try and keep that to yourself, when you're in a team environment, it does spill over a little bit. And I think no one's perfect with that. And frankly, recovery from mental health it's not all rainbows and sunshine. Like, it was really hard. And the people around me were incredibly supportive of that and incredibly supportive of me. But yeah, I guess I could have given up, but also it was never really an option to me. Of course, there was days where like I imagined my life without swimming. I wouldn't say otherwise. Of course, there was times where I was like, is this worth it? But I never sat there and went, 5 years from now, I want to make this work. Actually, hilariously, so Fukuoka obviously was originally meant to be, is it 2019?
Good question. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it's 2019, but please don't quote me. If I'm wrong, don't tell me because I know I might be. So that was the meet. Japan Worlds. That was what I wrote down as what I wanted to be like my the comeback from my recovery period. I mean, Gwangju was also on that list, and that clearly didn't go to plan. But so like, I'm not saying it all worked out. Like, it didn't all work out. Komi didn't work out. Gwangju didn't work out. But Japan was on that list. And that was almost like my kind of last one on the list, if that makes sense. That was almost if it's not working by this point, Amber, you really should be reconsidering. Yeah. And hilariously, obviously it got moved and actually it still ended up being the meet that was like my senior season breakthrough meet. But yeah, a little bit of stupidity and also a lot of perseverance. And it wasn't just all stupidity. Like, I'd done enough in training to know that I was still capable of good things. And I'm not saying that in a cocky way. I mean that genuinely, I had coaches around me who knew what kind of world-class swimming was like. And we knew that I wasn't just working hard for nothing or coming back for nothing. We knew I had potential that we hadn't managed to see yet. And like, from whether it be the times I was dropping that to someone from the outside might look really slow, but to us, we went, wow, I just did that off like 20K training weeks. And like, we knew that there was something special, like still that hadn't been seen. And I didn't know that it was necessarily going to take me to a world champs. I just knew that I hadn't reached my limit yet. And I did want to make a senior team, but I was also, the more important thing to me was that I knew that I could be kind of better than I had shown. And it was about, for me and the people around me, reaching my highest level, whatever that ended up being. And I hoped and I thought that was kind of senior level, but I didn't know that. But glad it worked out.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about your training now, but I just want to finish that kind of conversation we've just had there on, and again, to the listeners, if you're not following Amber on Instagram, I'd recommend it because you do post some fantastic things. And one thing that I really loved was when you post about what's the perfect bikini body. And you very rightfully said, put a bikini on and be happy in it. That's a great bikini body right there. And I think within that same, it was either in that same post or possibly a different post, you said about around competing and how, you know, you weigh more now, but that's giving you more power, more energy and all the rest of it. So again, you know, this kind of recovery that you've gone on now, actually truly understanding the the things that you need to understand, biologically, physically, mentally. It all sounds like it's come together, which is fantastic. But let's talk about your training. So I'm really intrigued now by the fact that you've made this transition. You said you were sort of doing 20 to 30k weeks.
That was when I was injured, to be fair.
So I assume that's a lot more now, for one. But also, is there anything different that you're now doing in training? Bear in mind that you train in a pool, I guess, still.
Yeah, so let's do like last season compared to this season, because last season, again, I was like healthy, I was all good, like training. So I was doing like, and it's more of a fair comparison than when I was kind of injured and kind of limping through. Last season, I probably averaged, like if we take out like taper and the build up to the cycle, I was probably doing like 55,000 meters a week on average, 9 sessions, probably 4 of them featured like intensity elements. So whether that would be like VO2 or threshold or race pace, depending on the time of the cycle and things like that. And I'd probably do 4 gym as well. And then this season, I'm now doing, or towards the end of the season, I was 10 swim sessions, so 1 more, 3 gym, so 1 less, although that'll probably go down again, and 1 run. And my average mileage, very hard to give, because I was quite because we were trying to build me through last season. Basically, the aim was to get me from 55k to as much as my body could handle healthily, and still manage to do intensity when we asked of it. So I was only doing 3 intensity sessions, so 1 less than the year before. But I got my volume basically up to around 80k. So to be honest, before Christmas, I didn't really go above, I think I maybe got up to 70, which is still 15k than the year before, so still quite significant. And then kind of up and down with competitions a little bit as well, to be honest, makes it a bit harder because we did so many competitions this year, which was needed because I needed experience so much. But it did make it a little bit more difficult to build the volume. But basically got up to kind of a good 4-week block where I was like above 80k, and then came down for Worlds. And yes, they mostly are in the pool. So of those 10 sessions, it also depends a little bit how I feel week to week. But I tend to do 1 to 2 open water. So my Friday morning, for example, is literally just me on a Friday morning. And so I tend to, some weeks I'll kind of text Mike and be like, please can I have a session? I'm going to do a pool. And some weeks I'll be like, I'm going to do open water tomorrow. And then kind of Thursdays, I tend to try and train like open water in a group if I can. So yeah, it's changed quite a lot, but also not that much. Swimming. At the end of the day.
Yeah. Where do you go and do your open water swims?
So there's a place called Manvers in Sheffield, or not in Sheffield, it's in Rotherham actually. But it's a gorgeous lake, and there's like an annual membership you can get, and they have all sorts of activities on the lake. But that's my usual place. There's a place in the Peak District that I've been before as well. But to be honest, I quite like going to the setup lake at Manvers because it means I can like go around buoys, and also it's just a bit safer. Like I wouldn't ever go open water swimming by myself, no matter where I was. Like you never know if you're going to accidentally kick something on the floor and cut yourself or so forth. And because it's only really me that trains open water in my training group, I tend to kind of go to Manvers where I know there's going to be other people around and that I'm definitely going to be safe.
Where's your favourite, or what's your favourite open water venue in this country?
In this country, do you know what? I really haven't done enough. Okay. This is something I want to do more of because I've literally been doing open water 12 months. And so I've kind of only swam around here a bit in Leeds and the one in Wales. And so I don't know. I literally can't ask that question, but my plan like over the next year is I want to try and actually go around the country and do some of the, like, we do have so many kind of, the Lake District. I mean, that in itself.
Absolutely.
I mean, I paddled there. That doesn't count though, does it?
You should post whenever you go to a new venue now on your Instagram, and we can sort of see like a little timeline of like, all the places you've gone to.
Little map.
Yeah. No, that'd be really good. What's your situation now then in terms of, do you get funding from British Swimming, or is there now a possibility of funding?
I've not been funded since I was funded in the 2013 to 14 season. I don't know whether or not my performances at Worlds will put me on that list or not. I guess we'll find out next year. I kind of live my entire life assuming I'm never going to get any funding. And then if I do, it's a bonus.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the only way I can plan. I just don't, you just never know, do you?
No.
So Who knows?
Yeah, fair enough.
I was on Swim England's performance pathway this year though, and they have helped me out this last season with like physiotherapy. And a little bit financially as well. So yeah,
brilliant. No, well, that's good to hear at the very least then. And 10 sessions a week alongside a PhD.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That can't be easy. So talk to us. Well, no. first, what's your PhD in, and then how do you find the balance?
Yeah, it is difficult. So my PhD is in chemical engineering. So my research group is looking at how to make silica nanomaterial in a bio-inspired way, in an environmentally friendly way. That sounds like you'll know nothing about it, like as a general public. However, actually you will. Kind of silica is used in like all sorts, from like toothpaste to like rubber soles to car tires. So yeah, every day you'll use tons of products with it in without really knowing it. But that's why it's such an important product for us to be able to make in a better way for the planet. And that's kind of the area that my PhD is based in. So yeah, doing that around 10 sessions is definitely challenging. I think some of it is made easier by knowing the Olympics is next year. I think if I'd have started this at the beginning of an Olympic cycle and started my PhD at the same time, it would have been very overwhelming. Sure. However, I am in my third year of my PhD now. So it's not such a third and final year. So you kind of have 4 years to complete it, and I'm in year 3, but my funding does end kind of next year. So you don't really want to go over the funding limit, but I do have a bit more time. It would have been, I don't know. Ignore that. It's been a challenge balancing the two of them. It's required a lot of planning, a lot of being boring, to be quite honest. And also I've been saving up for this upcoming season for quite some time. So actually when I got hit by that car, which was a pretty disastrous year, and actually really kind of ended up hampering my swimming career for like 3 years, because that was the year that all of the decisions about who was allowed to train during COVID got made. And obviously I'd been very injured and not really performing at my best in that year. So it was I would not wish it ever to happen again. However, I got compensation money from that accident because it did have a really severe impact on my life. And that money is basically helping me to drop down to part-time in my PhD for this final year. I also did like loads of extra teaching work during my first and second year to make this money, so that going into Olympic year, I don't have to worry quite so much about going away all the time with open water, and I've just got a little bit more flexibility in my day. So for the past 2 years, I'd get up in the morning, go swimming, go do my PhD in the office or in the lab, go swimming again, come home, work for an hour and a half maybe, and then go to bed, and then wake up and repeat.
And do it again.
Yeah. However, it just means that this year I don't have to work in the evenings, which sounds like a small thing, but is actually huge, because I've actually got time to myself. My work day ends at 3:00 and it actually ends. Yeah. And I'm not kind of like skimping on work. I'm still doing my hours. They're just more spread out, and I'm kind of using my own savings to supplement my PhD stipend for the year. So yeah, complicated, but made it work.
Complicated, but actually sounds like, exactly like you've just said there, you've got a structure now that seems to work for you, and that's always the most important thing for anyone, even for, me as a master swimmer, just trying to make sure that I get my sessions in the water and in the gym, and it not impact too much on my life at home. And I don't want people saying, "Oh, you're going out again, are you?" sort of thing. So it's it's always a balance, isn't it? But finding that balance is brilliant. So we are in an Olympic year now, less than a year till Paris. Well, literally just under a year, isn't it? I guess for one, your hopes are to go to Paris, and how will you qualify for Paris if you haven't already done so?
Yeah, definitely not qualified yet. That's definitely my aim. It's a lot of people's aim, but coming 18th at Worlds this year, my first year, has really given me a lot of confidence, actually. So the way that open water qualification works, in the 10K, because that's the only event we can qualify in, World Championships just gone, the 3 medalists from, obviously this all applies to both men's and the women's races, the 3 medalists have all booked their ticket to Paris. So they're kind of, out of the 22 total athletes that can kind of win a spot for Paris next year, 3 have gone. And then everything else is based on Doha Worlds next year. So although a lot of pool teams might be kind of skimping every open water team, that's the main game. So from that, the top 13 is automatically kind of going to Paris. That doesn't include the 3 people who've already medalled.
Mm-hmm.
So assuming they're going to Worlds, realistically, they're probably going to come in that top 13.
Okay.
So that kind of makes it a little bit easier, really, if it's top 16 and they're there and in those top 3, you're okay. So yeah, officially top 13. There's then 5 continental spaces. So that's 1 per each continent. Obviously, probably didn't need to explain that. I have to go through it in my own head, sorry.
Yeah.
And then there's 1 place, which is France's. However, France are incredible at open water. They will almost certainly already have at least 1 person within that kind of 21. So that place, if France already have someone qualified, we're assuming they will, goes to the next finisher at Doha. So irregardless of what continent they're from. So a little bit complicated, but that's how we do it.
Well, that's good to know, and I've never had it explained before, so that's really good to know.
It took me a while to get my head around it, to be honest. It took a lot of rereading. And so at World Championships just gone, I achieved the selection criteria for Doha 2024. So nothing's certain in this world, but hopefully I've done what I need to.
Of course. And certainly being a year out from Olympics, you've probably never been in a better position, both literally, but also like mentally, physically as well, which is great. Yeah,
definitely. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, I'm like, there's kind of so much work I have to do. Like I've been in this year and I feel like I could just do it 2 years, but at the same time, I'm like, you don't need 2 years. It's the same for everyone. Like, yeah, but it's just all happened so kind of ridiculously fast. I would say a little bit of a whirlwind. It's been a massive whirlwind. The last 6 months of my life, like I literally only qualified for Worlds, like 3 months ago. Here we are talking about ways to qualify for the Olympics, but it's pretty exciting. It's an exciting year. And after seeing the Paris course at the weekend, so we were there for the World Cup, supposed to be swimming, but unfortunately the water quality wasn't good enough. I mean, France just had so much rainfall, as did most of Europe from the sounds of it. But we got to walk around and look at the course, and I honestly can't think of a more iconic swim venue. It's on the Pont Alexandre, the third. I don't know why I've mixed a French accent and English words, but badly as well. Anyways, the bridge with all the gold statues that you think of when you think of French bridges, and then in the background there's the Eiffel Tower, and it's just it's going to be incredible for whoever gets to race there.
No, it sounds fantastic, and I'm fairly sure I and all the listeners know the answer to this question, but just to be absolutely clear, the only event that you're aiming for Paris is the 10K.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. So that is your one and only focus, which is probably a really good thing. I mean, I know you kind of the 4IM used to be kind of your main thing, but I guess anything kind of goes in the pool. A 4M, a 2IM, a 400 freestyle maybe, but actually now you've got I'm doing open water and 10K is my only option.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess when I first started open water, I was like, I want to keep a bit of IM training in, and then we were like Amber, you need to just pick. So I just picked. But I'm really happy I've made the right decision for me, and I still really do enjoy pool racing. And I mean, I'll probably do some of it. Well, I say that, but February is so close. I'm sure I'll be in the pool racing next season as well, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So just talking about those competitions that are upcoming then. Mm-hmm. So between now and say Doha, are there any key ones in the calendar for you?
There's a couple. So, I mean, none of this is 100% confirmed yet. But in the calendar of open water world, there is Barcelona European Cup, and that's at the end of September. So that'll be very early season, and probably a big shock to the system, but nothing wrong with that. Experience is experience. And Barcelona's great, isn't it? And then there's the final World Cup of the year is ALAT in December. Okay. And that's where the British athletes who haven't hit the selection criteria already can basically compete for their spots at Doha 2024. Okay. And there's a lot of nations using that as their qualification race. So that race is going to be absolutely stacked. But I mean, that's absolutely beautiful, and it'll be an incredible race. I'm sure. But yeah, they're kind of the two 10Ks that we're aware of that kind of are going on before Doha. So yeah, it all comes around pretty quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, and it all sounds very, very fantastic and very exciting as well. And listen, talking to you today really makes me feel like there's nobody more just worthy of going to Paris next year. And I really, really hope that you do. Everything that you've been through, you know, and I guess everything that you've just experienced as well in Japan, which was so fantastic. Your first proper experience, and then you smashed it and got in the top 20. A brilliant time. You've got things to work on, which is really good. You're working really hard as well every day with your PhD alongside it. You're living a nice, boring life, as you said, which is exactly what you're doing. So no, it also sounds so fantastic, and I really am keeping my fingers crossed for you. I'll be watching out on all your races, and as I've said to the listeners, do follow Amber on Instagram, because honestly, it's really inspirational.
Thank you. Don't make me cry. That's really, really kind. Yeah, no, I appreciate your time as well, and yeah, thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. Well, all the best, and speak to you soon.